redheaded stepchildren. First of all. And his was definitely spoiled. I don't want you to think he did get the twig quite often, but Mitch and Kelly and I went to Blackford. We went to Bellarmine. I want to express my appreciation to a few people before I get started. First of all, the church. They've been phenomenal. They have provided so much support for my mom. It's just over the top. So thank you so much for Pastor Cece and his staff. Thank you all for coming to honor my father. By the way, I was crying at the prelude, so this is going to be a tough one. I want to thank my mother, for loving my dad all these years. I really want to go out the way my dad did. He told me that he wanted to die in his sleep, and it wasn't. He was asleep for about a week, and he passed away. He went into the arms of the Lord, and my mom was there right with him and just kissed him goodbye, and it's a beautiful moment. I also want to thank, as Greg thanked Kelly, I want to thank Kevin Cookingham too for providing so much with his family, just being a cornerstone, and just so hospitable and wonderful for this family, and being there for my mom and dad. In fact, Kevin gave you a call in June, and he told me my dad was failing, and it's a really good idea if you just come out and see him while he's doing well and he's lucid. So Greg and I got together through just a series of events, kind of miraculous, and got out here for a week and spent quite a bit of time with my father, and it was just wonderful serving him. And he was always watching a ball game, and of course the Royals were, I'm from Kansas City now. I've been there 10 years, and the Royals were playing the Giants, and so we were kind of razzing each other back and forth. And I was listening to the game, and I'd listen for the score, and one time I asked my dad, and during this week, I said, "Dad, who's winning, who's winning?" And he said, I said, "What's the score?" And he said, 3-2. And I said, "Well, Dad, who's winning?" And he said, "Well, the team that has 3. That wasn't very long ago. But it was just a great time. We had no regrets, and it was the last time we saw him. It was wonderful. Much of this is mentioned. My dad had difficult early days. He grew up in Bakersfield. That says a lot right there. He had no siblings, and some of you don't know this, but my mom didn't either. So I have none of us have aunts or uncles. We have no cousins, and it's so shocking when I look out and see so many cousins and nieces and nephews now. Started with mom and dad, and look at what's happened over the years. It's just amazing. My dad never graduated from high school. He did get his GED. He told me when he was going through Bakersfield one time, he said he was the class clown. He was kicked out for not showing up and not doing his work. What a shocker. So what he did, what most guys would do during that time, he went into the military. He was in the Navy for 4 years, and I think that's where he got a lot of his discipline, and he learned how to be an electrician. And then, of course, he met Mom, which, asking her to marry him was the best decision of his life. I don't know about my mom's life. And he got a job at Lockheed as my sister mentioned, for 35 years. I mean, my kids can't even fathom that. 35 years working at one spot. But, down Santa Tomas Expressway and back every day in that old Chevy. Obviously, I had 4 kids. And then, as I mentioned, I moved to Kansas City 10 years ago. And so he came out to visit one time, and he said, I want to go down to Joplin, Missouri. And I'm like, why Joplin, Missouri? And he said, well, that's where my mom was from. So we went down there, and just had a wonderful day. I didn't think it was a great day, but at the end of the day, we were able to go to the courthouse and see where his ancestry was from. And I found out that his mother was from Germany. And we could see his mom's handwriting on the census. And my dad said it was one of the best days of his life. I mean, When I found out he was German, though, a lot of things kind of came into focus. One of them was the fact, I don't know, probably not many of you know this outside of the kids, and probably Phil, is that my dad constantly watered down the driveway and the curb. And it was like, what are you doing, Dad? And then I've been to Germany. They're sweeping the curb. They're doing all that stuff. So, and then he had an engineering mind, and I never quite understood the vastness of his abilities. It was amazing, and kind of a funny story. One time I was in church, and it was a great message, and I was there with my dad, and I walked up to him and I said, "Dad," I said, "wasn't that a great message?" And he said, "I don't know." And I go, "What do you mean?" And he said, I built a deck. And I go, "What do you mean?" And he said, "I built a deck during the service." He didn't hear a word. Okay. So I just want to, my son said to me, you can't capture the essence of a man in a string of words, and it's so true, but we're trying to do it with my dad, and I just have a few life lessons that he taught me, and I want to share them, and I'll keep it brief and share a story. The first was that he kept life simple. He said the two essentials in life, and I know many of you have heard this, are good food and two-ply tissue. He added baby wipes later on in his life. Don't take yourself too seriously. My dad just didn't. I remember one time, and Bob Hoffman will remember this, Bob there, they were riding bikes and they were just getting into it, and my dad was really getting the whole the whole outfit and everything, and he had the shoes. And so he put his helmet on, and he said, "Kev, come with me down to the bike shop. There's a few extra things I need to get for my bike." And I'm like, "Okay." So we ride down there, and he's walking in, and bigger than life, my dad shows up, and it's like he wants all the attention. And so he's talking to the guy about, how he's getting into biking. He's basically a professional now. The guy looked at him and he said, "You might want to turn your helmet around." Third thing was don't fear the enemy, but always leave it out. Leave yourself an escape route. I know Mitch and Kelly will remember this because I don't think he was born at the time, but we were on vacation in African Safari, USA. I don't know if you've ever been there before, but we were driving through Oregon. It was 300 degrees, and we were in the classic station wagon, and of course it broke down in the middle of lion country. I would say there were 2 male lions, probably about 40 yards away. So I'm watching my dad, what is he gonna do? Well, I figured he would, maybe just wait and let it cool down and move on. Well, he hopped out of the car, left the door open, and opened the hood. And these 2 lions were staring at him like, oh my gosh, we have a snack here. We couldn't believe it, and my mom was yelling, "They're gonna eat the children!" And I always wondered why he left the door open, and I realized it was for him to get back in and get home. Communication is the key, especially with small things. I was coming back from a ski trip, and there were a couple of gentlemen that were with us that were dwarves. And in fact, if you know what's the name of that program? Little People. They were the 2 guys that were in that show, just wonderful guys. And I got to know them through a friend of Bev's. And so I was driving home, and one of them was in the passenger seat. And my dad, as normal, he came out and ran out to greet us, and he opened the door, and a dwarf came out, and my dad stumbled backwards, and I didn't think too much of it. And then we went in the house having a good time, and then he said, "Kevin, outside." Oh no. And he pulled me around the side of the house, and he looked at me as serious as could be and said, "Don't you ever bring home a dwarf without calling ahead." Classic Bill Troupe. Fifth lesson, words are powerful, have the power of life and death. And Phil said, honey, I remember sweetheart. Sweetheart all the time. He would call us sweetheart. 26 years old, sweetheart, good shot on the golf course. And it would echo through the entire canyon. In the locker room, 17 years old, Kev, sweetheart, where are you? I was trying to fit into my locker, all the guys were making fun of me. It wasn't until later that I found out that a lot of the guys on the golf course thought we were a gay couple. There's more to that story, but this is not the place. Number 6, carefully consider the interests of others first. And I hope I can make it through this one. If I don't, Goose is going to take this one for me. But before I moved out to Missouri, a lot of events had taken place. And so the last thing I wanted to tell my dad was that I was moving to Missouri. And because I knew he just didn't want me to go. So I told him the whole story. And he looked at me and he said, at the end of it, it sounds like God to me. And the reason that's so powerful to me is because he just didn't want me to go. What I didn't realize was that 20 years ago, Greg had the same conversation with my dad. And my dad said, he's never going to visit. So my dad obviously matured over the And then finally, briefly, life is short, and that's the story my father is telling us all now. And I just want to read a quick passage from Psalm 39. It says, Lord, make me to know my end, and what is the measure of my days, that I may know how frail I am. Indeed, you have made my days as handbreadths, and my age is nothing before you. Certainly every man at his best is but vapor. Surely every man walks about like a shadow. Surely they busy themselves in vain. He heaps up riches and does not know he will gather them. And now, Lord, what do I wait for? My hope is in you. And that's the key for me. Our hope is in him. It's not in this life. And the currency that my father gave me was love and humility. And I'll appreciate him forever for that. And then finally, I just want to make a quick comment about one of my nephews, Jesse Troupe. He had written a letter to my dad, and he had said in his letter, "You're my best friend and the love of my life." And I just echo that, and I think we all feel the same.